I think now that I'm a veteran, thinking back on my military service and what that means, I always think of like my oath of enlistment. And there's no termination point to your oath of enlistment. It doesn't end whenever you leave military service. It's actually a lifelong oath that you take. And now that I'm just a regular person, when I think of Veterans Day, I think of being a good community member, of making sure I vote, of being supportive of constitutional rights. So now Veterans Day to me just is another step to learning more about the world. Hello, my name is Naomi Whitten.
Hi, my name's Thomas Nelligan.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Valverde. I am a junior,
My concentration is integrative biology.
Social studies.
and I'm concentrating in government. So I served in the Marine Corps for 6 years as a signals intelligence operator. And so I was in Hawaii at 3rd Radio Battalion. And I joined the Marine Corps because I have a twin sister who served right out of high school. And I got to see her change in her demeanor, just kind of, she had so much pride, and something radiated off of her, and it was just so obvious that she had changed as a person. And I was going to college at the same time that she was, and I felt like I didn't really have like a purpose. I felt like I was just kind of going through the motions a little bit, and it kind of dawned on me that maybe there's something I could do a little more purposeful. And when would I get a chance to serve with my sister again?
I come from like a military family. Both my parents had served. My mother flew helicopters, and my father was in the infantry. So in the Army, I was a 35 Papa, cryptologic linguist, French. I think my time in the military left me with a lot that I wanted to learn about.
My military career started in 2017, and I served until 2023 in the United States Marine Corps. And I worked as a ground electronics maintainer. It was always in the back of my mind to return to college. And so, I just made sure that I prepared well as best as I could.
I always had this idea of like higher education as a end goal pretty early on. I used Service to School, which is a nonprofit that helps a lot of veterans apply, and they pair with an advisor, and my advisor just was like, hey, like you have really good stats, you have a really compelling background, your resume is very solid, and you're a pretty good writer, like you should really think about applying to the Ivies. He had applied and found a lot of success in similar kind of schools, and he's like, your resume is better than mine, so.
I loved the Marine Corps so much. I think if you know any of my friends, I talk about it maybe too much sometimes. I miss it every single day. So I knew if I was gonna leave the Marine Corps, it was gonna have to be something that if I missed my experience so much, that I would be okay being away from it. And I wanted to do something that still felt purposeful and impactful. And so to me, that was going to Harvard, because I knew that the people I would get to meet would be able to help me kind of give back to that community. They're going to be decision makers and leaders. I knew that Harvard was the choice because it had to be worth leaving the Marine Corps. It had to be worth leaving that community.
So Harvard is definitely a monolith, and a first impression of it can be a bit awe-inspiring. I think showing up for Visitas, which is like the admitted students weekend that happens in April, it was actually pouring rain. And so I was like, oh wow, the weather here is pretty terrible. But I gotta meet the veteran community on campus, which was phenomenal, and just the other students and the other organizations on campus, and they're just like overwhelmingly kind and open and just wanted to talk about Harvard and how great it was.
I'm so glad that there's a veteran community here that have become my best friends, and they probably will be for a long time.
If you're active duty or a veteran considering applying to college or any sort of higher level institution, and you're worried about fitting in, I would say, or I'd ask or challenge you, what is the alternative? Will you fit in anywhere? Not in a negative way, but just to say that there are people from all walks of life in every institution, and you shouldn't let that be a setback to your educational journey.
I would say the best advice I have is give yourself grace. You've done some of the most physically and mentally demanding things that you might ever have to do again, and you are used to being uncomfortable, and you have all of the tools to be resilient in that. So give yourself grace.
When it comes to coming back to higher education, it's definitely something that I was worried about myself. I found that, what I learned in the military about just like self-discipline, timelines, punctuality, preparedness, they actually, carry over very well into the academic setting. It's very much the same as being in the military in a lot of ways. You have to show up at the right place and the right time with some form of clothes on, and I think if you can do the basics right, which the military trains you to do the basics right all the time, you will find immense success both at Harvard and anywhere else you go when it comes to higher education.
Really start utilizing the resources while you're active duty. You have Dante's testing, so you are able to take the SAT or ACT free of charge. through your education center, and this is across all branches of the military. Just Boston itself, it's so easy to navigate. The airport's close by. It's very veteran friendly, the city of Boston is. And so if you're thinking whether or not this community is a great choice for you, I would encourage you to come visit, come during Visitas, and see what it's all about.
I think Veterans Day is always a strange holiday for me. I think growing up, both my parents were technically veterans, but never really felt like it was a holiday that we celebrated. It always felt like, a far off thing in the far past. Being at Harvard is a bit strange. A lot of things here are named Memorial this, Memorial that. And so you have a lot of reminders of just like what this place stands for and what it means.
But I think being at Harvard, you get to meet some of the people who are the best at what they do. They're the most famous at what they do, and they have a lot of praise. And so being here at Harvard, thinking about Veterans Day, it's a reminder to be grateful for the people who didn't expect any praise, that they did it with the intention of probably no one ever knowing their name. And I think it just makes me feel grateful. And so being here, I just try to remind myself that there's so many people whose stories won't be heard. And I'm so happy to get to be even the smallest part of that. And I hope that I just represent it well. And I'm just grateful for people like my dad, people like my sister. We have security guards here who've also served, and you wouldn't know unless you asked them. And they're just so humble. So that's kind of what Veterans Day makes me think of now that I'm here at Harvard.
So happy Veterans Day to all the veterans and soon-to-be veterans out there. And as always, Veterans Day falls right with the Marine Corps birthday. So happy birthday, Marines, and Semper Fi.
We just passed the Army's 250th anniversary. It was a great time. I was in DC for that, so it was a very, very fun little celebration going on. And I just want to say happy Veterans Day to everybody out there, and hopefully 250 more.
Happy Veterans Day, Marines, and Semper Fidelis.